All right. Good morning, world. Good to see you guys out there.
Morning.
Right on, Matt. Good
Yeah,
to
look,
see
we
you,
made
buddy.
it here on time.
Hey, look at us. We gotta have to be because we're going live whether we're here or not.
Exactly.
Kudos
to us both.
I know, right? We're alive and shaking, and Evil Cerise is here. Loris, good to see you guys here. We're broadcasting from beautiful San Francisco. I don't know.
It's like a purple background.
I want to know, like, Mt.Mograph. How'd you come up with that?
So Mt.Mograph is actually funny. So my middle name is Michael. So I went with Matthew Michael. I was like, I got two M's to work with. What else is next? And I was like, okay. So I drew the M's, and I was like, those kind of look like mountains. And
oh, Matthew Michael.
Yeah, I
so
know.
the M and M, and you see those right here above your head, by the way.
Yeah,
see
sure.
right there?
Wow, look at that. Beautiful.
Right here. Matthew Michael Mt.Mograph.
Yeah.
Thumbs up.
It kind of worked out perfect.
Yeah,
so
see, it was meant to be. I like it.
Morning, everybody.
Want to know where you guys are broadcasting from as well. Pepoy Magusha with an interesting name. Not very well known in the U.S. as a name, so I'm wondering where you're from.
I would trade for that name any day. I got the most boring name, yeah.
Hello. Well,
Matt.
Paul. Matt and Paul. I think in other countries we would pretty much be the same person.
Yeah,
we're pretty much the same person. We're like two white boys from the U.S. with pretty standard names.
We'll merge powers, like the Wonder Twins.
It's just
or
you have the superpowers of After Effects and motion graphics, which I dig. So hello Portugal in the house. Pedro, welcome. We do have a full day ahead of us, by the way. So we do have good old, of course.
Hi from Colorado too.
Ooh,
sorry. I didn't mean to cut
yeah,
you off.
actually we're both from Colorado as well.
Yeah, I saw Colorado,
jump in.
So I'm a fan.
Yes, James Love, also a very cool name, James Love.
Yeah,
it's freaking killer.
Again, some people just get better names.
Speaking of cool, and by the way, welcome from Philippines, Papoy, India in the house. Wonder how late it is there. Ayush, Illinois, Anna, Colombia, Juan, awesome.
Ann Arbor, Michigan. I know that place.
We're getting a little closer. Philippines, Papoy is, so that's has to be the farthest away. So, hats off to you. Appreciate you showing up. I'm wondering what time it is there, honestly, because that's fantastic. Uganda,
maybe super late.
Maryland, Joel, welcome. And speaking of cool names, we have a full day today. It's going to be super fun. Essentially, we have Matt for the next 2 hours, which is super fun. We have some cool stuff planned right here. We also have 11 a.m. D.W. Watterson. Sweet name, by the way. Of course, she had to be a director.
Right?
So cool.
Yeah,
and just cool. You just feel cool being around her, just being in her vicinity.
DW.
I feel D.W.
Like,
Watterson.
that reminds me. I don't know if anyone else knows this, but like that not Arthur. There's like some show as a kid. And like DW, I think, was like the little sister. I don't know.
Really?
I might be so wrong with that. I don't know, but that's where I picked it up. It's a cool name either way.
It is cool. With Simone Smith doing video editing. 1 p.m. we have Andrew Embry is going to be doing some After Effects as well. Super fantastic. Ed, what he does, and Rachel and Nguyen at the end of the day, 3 p.m. So stick around with us all day, guys, and these are being recorded. You could always go back the past 3 days. This is our last day, so we'll probably get a little loopy after a while, but we're most happy to have you guys here. Aaron Williams from New Orleans, really within the top 5 most popular places in the U.S., I think.
In Texas, preparing for a hurricane.
Oh, really?
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I mean... And to think that that's an annual thing that probably may or may not, I don't know, depending on where you live. Are you on the coast? I don't even know.
Get ready for hurricane season.
Arthur and DW.
I was right.
You nailed it.
Can I give myself 10 points to start the day?
You get 10 points.
Nice.
Ching.
Malaysia.
10 points for Matt. 10 points to whoever's watching from Papoy as well. 10 points for you because you are from the Philippines. So awesome.
I gotta agree with Chris right there. Rachel is like a gem of a person.
Yeah, she is.
She's so nice.
She's another one that like I feel a little frumpy around her. So stylish.
Yeah, you're like. So
I'm like,
stylish,
how I need to step up my game.
Nice,
Shouldn't I have a scarf or something? I don't know, like.
I should have pulled that.
A collar, but just not a collared shirt, just a collar.
Yeah, that would have been the right look, I think.
A scarf or a collar. I don't know. You need some like flair. I have no flair around her. She's all the flair.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
Powerful.
So what are you thinking for today, huh?
Yeah, so today I think we're gonna do a little bit of animating, do a little bit of talking about animating, do a little bit of talking about design, and also we'll be doing some scripting. So I prepared a little bit of kind of like a starter code so we can kind of just jump into making our own little utility script and not go through the hassle of trying to figure out how to make a resizable panel. So I think Paul is going to be getting that out to everybody so we can kind of dive in all together.
Yes, that would be good. And don't worry, we'll start easy because I think it's always nice just to kind of get warmed up in After Effects and just like, because what you do, even what you did yesterday morning, you're like, oh, I'll just do this, this, and this.
I might have babbled.
You feel free to like take a breath. But you were showing cool tips that you're just kind of glossing over, and I think people were like, hey, that's really cool.
Yeah, so maybe we'll do some deeper depth stuff.
Yeah, and just and even just start out light, because I think it's fun just to like watch somebody animate, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Watch you create something, even if it's a moving square that becomes 5 squares and they're all tinted differently, and then they start rotating, just like that type of stuff. And I also will say, even between you and Andrew, it's fun watching these things go from 2D to 3D. Is also like a fun thing to see, because
Andrew's got
breaks
a
that third
really
plane.
Interesting little workflow too, and that's like one of those things I think like every single person has some kind of unique workflow, so it's always great to be able to look.
Yes, and this is good too. So we're open to comments and suggestions. Evan mentions it'd be interesting to see how you go from storyboard and then to animating as well.
Cool, yeah.
A lot of times you'll start out with a sort of a static illustration.
Yeah, I really like we were kind of talking about the couple last days. I really like to start just with like that physical notebook. I feel like just paper on pencil kind of is a good way to just really think about what you're designing. So yeah, we can definitely talk more about that.
Yeah, we stole a sketchbook yesterday and showed everyone.
Yeah, so fast. You're so fast.
Like while you were working away.
Yeah.
That's what we did. So again, Indonesia, it's midnight there, so welcome, buddy.
And thanks for joining.
Yes. Good evening from India. All right. Well, it looks like your screen, actually. We're able to see it, my friend.
Cool.
You got some scary stuff up there, though, too.
No, it's really not scary. We're only looking at 54 lines of code.
There's like words and not words there.
Yeah. But this is, I promise, it's going to look scarier than it actually is. And I don't know if we're able to make this little, like, begin code available, but this kind of has some comments already pre-written in here just so you can, like, add some buttons, and then we can talk about just adding and creating your own functions as well. But we'll be creating 3 kind of helpful little functions today. One is going to be for doing what's called like a prerequisite check, so making sure you have an active composition, active layers, or selected properties. We can write a clever little function. They kind of check that for whatever other function we'll be using that in. We'll be doing one that will go through adjustment layers and just renaming it to the first effect, which I really like to have. And then we'll do one that actually can add expressions to your selected property. So we don't see those functions in here because we'll be writing them together, but this is kind of our little jumping off point, I guess.
No, that is good. But we will open up After Effects now too. Like, I don't know if you want to dive into this now or how you're feeling.
So I mean, we can kind of circle back to this. I do have After Effects open already, so we'll be good to go.
I know. Do you feel like there's a brief sigh, at least from me, just like
no code?
Well, yeah. And I'll show scripts in like Illustrator and stuff. Which is cool, but you start to lose people, and our plan is not to lose people. We want this to be helpful. Somebody already mentioned sort of storyboard to animation, and kind of talked about that. But and even from the get-go, by the way, I always think your setup is interesting.
Well,
sort
thank
of
you,
going
sir.
From timeline to the top. No, I just said it was interesting. I didn't say it was good.
Oh.
I'm joking.
Ooh, with
Zinger.
the fire.
Oh,
with
it's
the
not
fire.
hot. No, I'm just joking. But it makes sense because you started out in Flash, which this was their format, and it totally works. So yeah, man. Actually, can you play? And I love that animation, but
yeah, I can kind of pull up our little. I guess we're gonna call this like a little stinger, which is these are some little animations, and I threw together before we came to this. I should preview all of it instead of just the first half. But yeah, so these are just little segments of things we can talk about today. We've talked about a couple of them, like styling. And also we made the blue pyramid yesterday. So yeah, we can talk about any of these little things in this video. I think we also have the vector files available if you'd like to try to play around or just see how those files are separated.
We could push those out, and just so you guys know, if you are on Adobe Live, there is a little button in the lower right for replays. Don't check those out now, check them out later, but since you mentioned the pyramid and stuff, there's also a contest that's happening as well, so you could submit an animation for that. And then even we also talked about the template yesterday and how you'd put that together.
Sure, yeah.
Can you just describe the template for everyone?
Yeah, so that's like the new kind of system from Adobe. It's called the motion template, which is basically, if you're an animator, it's something to give to your editor to make their life easier, because a lot of editors kind of like to stay in Premiere and don't like to go into After Effects. It scares them, so you can kind of deliver this really helpful little template where they're able to customize it right in Premiere, and we went over that yesterday, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and not only that, there are already some pre-baked templates in Premiere, which essentially I would think are After Effects files that you could probably find on your desktop and open up in After Effects. I'm guessing.
Ooh, I'm actually not sure about that.
You can't do that. Don't do that
types.
Is what I'm saying. I was saying what not to do this morning is to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, but
and that
cool.
makes sense. Kind of lock it down, so.
Yeah, deliver exactly what you want your editor to be able to do.
Yeah, exactly. What you want them to do and what you don't want to do. And it's cool how you went through every single process of that. I was like, yes, you can change the size of the font, but maybe you can't change the color because that deals with the branding of, the company or
and
the channel.
you can set those ranges or default things up as well. So
yeah, which is way cool. So even if you're producing like YouTube videos, to have a splash animation that you created in After Effects, but you're using a template because you're changing the title of the video, even though your name doesn't change from video to video.
Right. Yeah.
So that's cool. But you don't even in making your videos, you don't even go into Premiere Pro, do you?
Yeah, well, so I used to just like record a video like just all the way through and just cross my fingers that it turned out okay.
Which is freaking baller, by the way.
That's probably the first 70 videos was just like sitting down and just recording, and then I kind of have wised up and I started to do a little bit of editing in Premiere just to like cut into the composition panel or cut out.
Okay, yeah, just to kind of. But I mean, even just to record something straight through, that's super hard.
Yeah, you know what? It's one of those things. It's always I would be so scared to go back to any of my first couple videos and hear how rough they might have been.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. So you're like, maybe I won't watch past things. So
yeah.
Yuri, welcome. You're in San Francisco. That's where we are. Beautiful Golden Gate Bridge right outside this panoramic view we have. And is Adobe After Effects hard? I think that's a good place to start. Like, is it hard? I think it's okay just to spend 2 minutes and cover the fundamentals, because I don't want to lose anybody. We usually have quite a range. We have obviously diversity in location. For sure.
I think Sean is right there. It's like it's kind of like, I think After Effects you kind of like graduate into. I think it was really hard when I first opened up After Effects. It was like the most intimidating program I'd ever seen at the time. So I actually went from Flash to Illustrator to Photoshop back to Illustrator, and now I'm pretty comfortable in After Effects. But After Effects isn't hard. It just has like a little bit of a learning curve, and like once you get over that first little curve, it starts to feel very familiar and pretty nice.
Yeah, and you could even start with those files. So, obviously with an Illustrator file or a Photoshop file.
Exactly.
Like you could literally load that in and you'll have all the individual layers and even everything in its composition.
Yeah, and that's actually another great reason to kind of start with Illustrator or Photoshop, is then you have artwork to immediately start playing around with in animating as well.
Yeah.
So that's pretty sweet. But yeah, I totally agree with Evan right there. It looks very intimidating and like a different kind of workflow, but it does feel very good to kind of get over the first curve and learn about. And it starts to feel fun after a while once you get the hang of it.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. And we know everybody's like donating here on their own of their own free will. So.
That's got to be 10 points to them too.
10 points to everybody.
Exactly.
Serinda Pandas brings up a great point.
Sure.
Which is about leading the eye.
Leading the eye. Okay, so
Just
I mean,
kind of focusing their eye and all that stuff. I think it's just an interesting topic, quite frankly.
yeah. So leading the eye. I don't know if I should be like building something or.
Yeah, you should be.
Okay. So yeah, with like
even if you just start with something basic. Start with something basic, and then we'll kind of just have some fun, quite frankly.
Okay, so with like leading the eye, I think what's kind of nice is you can use certain kinds of grids. You can use like, you got to understand like any grid or template or guideline you use, it's just a guideline, so you don't have to like always follow something 100% with like the rule of thirds or any of those kind of things, or even like the what is it, the golden ratio?
Yeah, golden ratio.
Yeah, like any of those things, they're really cool to have, but you don't need them. So I mean, those are like kind of the first starts, is just to just kind of understand how to use the grids. But then also, I mean, just looking at even this little button down here at the bottom, which is your title and action safe grid, which you can just pop up in your composition panel here. You can just start to see like what kind of space you actually have to animate in. Like people's eyes are always going to be drawn more to the center of your composition. So yeah, keep stuff more in the center, and things that are obviously moving more than other things are going to be more engaging for the viewers. But yeah, so I don't know if that answered the question at all.
Yeah, no, it does. And what's interesting about that is I always turn on those guides, those title safe and action safe, even though they are kind of harkening back to old school sort of like broadcast, when TVs would sometimes cut in and cover up the edges.
Yeah, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, and everyone was just like, this is the best technology
ever. And you're like missing out on content. So rather than getting a word cut off, they'd say, bring your content into this so far. Line it up. You've just drawn a simple shape. Perfect. That could have just as easily been imported from Illustrator. Could you do a copy and paste?
Yeah, you could do a copy and paste. Actually, what's kind of nice, here's a nice little tip. People might know, if you just start to draw a shape layer, and you hold Command and toggle down, you're going to see we have this little property called path. So if I was in Illustrator, which I'll open up, I like to use actually this task launcher called Alfred. And you can just kind of like type in whatever you need. You can also do some math in here, like 540 times 56, and you can just see your answers.
I didn't know Alfred did that.
Well, there you go, a little tip for you.
We're learning stuff.
Yeah, but I really like using task launchers, and I love saving time. So yeah, I just opened up Illustrator using a task launcher, and now I can show you. Sorry I didn't have the open, guys, but I'll show you that little thing I was just saying. So if I'm in Illustrator and I draw some awesome shape.
That is an awesome shape.
That is my awesome shape. That's really impressive.
So generous.
You can just copy it and then toggle back into After Effects and just paste it actually onto your path.
So if you have that selected, and why did you hold down the Control key when you clicked?
Yeah, so on Mac, I don't ever know like the equivalent on Windows. I don't know if it's like Control or also Command, but yeah, holding Command and clicking the arrows will toggle down all of the child properties of that arrow, and you can hold Command and click again. So that also works for like the nested groups of layers. So if I go to fill and I hold Command, I can click it to toggle
I didn't know that.
all of those.
So Command click will twirl out everything. Control click on a PC, but I like that.
Yeah, that's kind of nice. So yeah, that's how you can kind of paste in shapes, and I guess that's a nice way to work. You can also, of course, just draw your shapes natively in After Effects, but not have all the nice things that Illustrator has.
No, I like it. Lots of comments coming in. Appreciate everybody joining us. I think morphing is a good. Ayush mentions morphing.
Sure.
Which is cool, because you'd want to do that with a shape, and when I see the word morphing, I think of just like at least bending a line or changing it, and that's actually probably a bigger subject as I think about it.
It's one of those things, like when you're doing a morph, you can either do it really loose and just kind of wing it and just hope things work out, or you can do something where you have like, I'm back in Illustrator here, and maybe you've drawn a shape, and today, I promise I won't use that red color I was finding.
It's always the go-to color.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how.
Don't worry. I'll keep an eye on it to make sure.
Okay, but yeah. So like, I mean, you could start with some simple shapes. We'll kind of mock up a little cell phone here, and switch this. But yeah, like if you have some kind of basic design, it's always easier to kind of start thinking about your morph. Like copy this, paste it in place, and kind of scale this down. And just use the eyedropper tool on this guy and kind of toggle it. But yeah, if you have like some kind of set design, you could just duplicate your layer here and then kind of hide the first layer. And then if your next shape is maybe
like a tablet,
yeah, we could go with like maybe a tablet or something. You could just start to like think about how to use the shapes you already have, which is a good starting point for just to think about your morph. And then, you know, maybe if your next object has more elements, that's okay, but at least you have like that base. So it's really good just to plan out at least your base of animation. I kind of just like basically could have just flipped the cell phone, right?
Well, no, that's good though. I mean, because essentially kind of what you're creating is, somebody mentioned like a storyboard. So here's frame one. All you're doing, it's your storyboard. Frame one, like later on, you're gonna have a.
Yeah, but I mean, just with morphs, I think it's good to think about just your base shapes instead of, think about your base shapes instead of just the whole animation. I think is like work in segments when you're thinking about like a morph, because, you know, like this might look a little different from the cell phone. It might have like one extra shape or one extra element.
Where does that come from?
Yeah, and you can just kind of like think about then using like a mask or an alpha mat or whatever to kind of bring in your extra shapes. But yeah, I really like to whenever I have to do morphs, I really like to just see what I can already work with as a base. Sometimes you get icons to start and you just have to kind of wing it and just cross your fingers and do a Hail Mary.
Yeah, and but basically you're doing with those shapes, it's just you're just animating it from one point to another.
Yeah, you would like for that last one, I mean, it was just like scaling. You'd try to like delay it, try to make it look kind of interesting, and just kind of go through it like that. So yeah, that's kind of how I approach morphing.
When it comes to like even like say morphing a single shape, a circle into a star, how would you do that?
So yeah, you would actually probably
like you could actually take a line. So if in Illustrator you use the blend tool, which looks like an animation. Could I do that?
Well, we'll see. We'll take Paul's morning challenge and try to make a star into a circle.
Okay.
We'll see.
In a cool way.
This could be
may or may not work.
This could be an epic fail, right?
It will work.
So yeah, you can just kind of look at what kind of properties you have to work with. Like for this one, as I'm cranking up the points, I kind of get some kind of blur effect. I don't know if that's something I'd use. But yeah, you just kind of like creep around your properties and see what you have to work with. I mean, you have like for a star, you have an outer radius and an inner radius. So maybe my inner radius looks like it's getting me closer to a circle. So why don't
animate it?
Yeah, why don't I set a keyframe on that inner radius and just scale this up till it almost looks like a circle. And actually, here's another something I really like to do. So if we're trying to end up as a circle, I'll just go and draw a little circle on our screen that's kind of the right shape and actually maybe a little bit larger than what we want. So one of the things we like kind of touched on yesterday is just trimming your layers and kind of letting the viewer's eyes or your why am I setting this so stupid? Oh, another little shortcut for anyone who's interested, Option Command B to set your work area to the entire timeline. But yeah, so you can kind of trim these layers, and so we don't even need to have like a transition. Like people's eyes might just kind of make that connection for us, and maybe even do that sooner, and that might kind of feel like a big pop. So I'll actually add some little easing to this as well. But yeah, so we'll preview this and just see if it looks terrible or kind of cool. So that might have been maybe not as smooth as we had hoped.
And I really liked what you were doing with adding more points to the star. Because that got a blur effect. Like, could you do that at the same time?
Sure, and you don't even need to do like this instant cut. That probably maybe wasn't the right choice. But this is again like just a really, I really take like I really like to just explore the animation as I'm building it. So I mean, you just play around. But so for example, I'm gonna actually scale this up in the background, and we can also do something with the points. But so this is just gonna almost like scale up. Oh, I should keep this here. Sorry about that. It's early morning and we're trying. So we kind of just scale this up and hopefully it'll cover up our other layer. So it's gonna kind of almost merge over. But that's maybe like one way you would probably work with this easing a little bit better. Maybe do something like that. But yeah, just do. You just have to like play around and just see what kind of look you're going for. Again, we can go to those points and press U and see all of our active keyframes and just kind of crank these points up as well in that transition. And maybe that'll look cool. Maybe it'll look weird. But we have some kind of transition or more.
Yeah. So. No, and that is cool. And I think, and then you start thinking about like sort of the principles of animation, which I've seen you use. So you're about to do something, maybe you're going to even shrink something down, but I've seen you guys, it'll go a little bit larger and then it goes down.
Like build up some anticipation. So maybe even for this quick example, maybe we'll actually like scale up larger before we scale down. So it's almost, we'll see, this might be a pretty rough animation, but just give it some kind of a life.
Like a life before and a life after.
Yeah, and that's basically, I guess how I would do like a simple morph, like a star to a circle. Trick people's eyes, as Yuri says, which is exactly what animation is all about.
Trick their eyes.
Trick their eyes. 10 points to Yuri.
Yeah, 10 points to Yuri. Right on.
Yeah.
We've been with easily 30 points today. And Luis, thank you so much. He says he loves your tutorials.
Thank you so much.
Always open to like more ideas on what you guys want to see, even today, and for tutorials in general. So
yeah.
And that's what we're basically getting.
Yeah. I mean, if you want, I saw some interest with the scripting from a couple people to start.
Yeah.
Is that something anyone would want to see right now?
Can you? Well, I mean,
or should we wait a little bit?
So when you say scripting, I think of a couple things, because I think of expressions as well, which is kind of like an intro to scripting. Am I wrong or no?
Well, yeah.
Tell
So
me.
expressions are almost like you hold Option and you click your stopwatch, and you actually have this little arrow right here you can click to just start to see some of the more basic kind of properties you can pull into an expressions. Expressions just are in After Effects, but if you want to do a script, we're going to maybe later today create something like a little utility script that you can actually like dock yourself and start making your own little workflow tools that you can just kind of put in your interface.
Nice.
And we'll make something that has 3 little nice functions, and one of them's really, really helpful and cool. So
Yeah. Cool.
naming the adjustment layer. That's one of the functions we'll be covering.
Yeah. And like, why would you write a function or a script? Excuse me.
So it's really just about whatever task you want to automate. So for me, if we look into like some of the little compositions in here, how I like to use my adjustment layers is like, let's see. Yeah, I always put my adjustment layers at the top, and each of my adjustment layers kind of has one effect on it for a couple reasons. So I can copy and paste it easier, and I can also turn it on and off a lot easier as well. So
and it makes it more like Photoshop.
Yeah.
As well.
And I mean, just like automating the task of kind of renaming adjustment layers automatically, it's just kind of nice, save some time, and you don't have to waste time typing on the keyboard, which is always wonderful. One click is better than a bunch of key presses.
And I think you just nailed it right there. It's like, so you don't waste time, and that's why you'd write these scripts to do these things that would normally take a lot of time.
Yeah, on client projects is really important that you're hitting your deadlines, and just anytime you can save even just a minute, it's really, really nice. So I'm a huge fan of making workflow tools, and I also think just kind of learning how After Effects handles processing functions and processing the tools you want to create gives you a better idea of how animation works just in general too. It's kind of like a deep dive into the other side of animation, like almost behind the scenes.
So I was going to mention like wiggle again, which you did the other day. Obviously that was an expression, but that's a built-in, like wiggle is an effect built in After Effects, right?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, you can like write a script to process through all your layers and all your selected properties, and add an expression to each of the selected properties that you don't have to like go write yourself, and you can do it so it's almost like iterative, where each of the expressions can like build off of another expression, and they can get really, really intense. I've written some expressions that were like over 300 lines, and I've written some scripts that were like closing in on like that 10,000 line mark. Pretty intense. Yeah. Went deep.
Yeah.
Oh, we
have quite the a variety of people, because some people that say they're just learning After Effects, which is cool.
Yeah,
I'm actually curious. They mentioned they took Intro to After Effects, I thought, at Adobe MAX. I'm kind of curious who the instructor was, and just out of curiosity. But you're obviously a resource, is where I'd point people to, and
Live
Adobe
Gamer.
Live.
Have you touched on using proxies yet? If I can actually show just one other really quick tip, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, please. Sure time, buddy.
Okay, so what I really like to do, and this is something you actually get a really great indication of in your timeline. So we're gonna draw some kind of layer on the screen real quick, and just add an expression to this, like time times 150.
So this right here alone, can you even zoom in on that? I'm sorry.
Sure, yeah,
just
no problem at all.
just dumb it down for me, man. There we go.
Okay, right. So
I love this, and that's a circle that you're rotating, by the way.
Yes, that I'm planning to rotate.
Okay.
Wow, but
good.
no, but around an anchor point, so it's gonna be more like,
okay, good, because that's what threw me.
Or something, yeah. Like we're not gonna see any
because
of this.
I could rotate a circle all day long as long as it's from the center point.
Yeah, exactly.
I've rotated the circle as far as you know.
Look at this one go. But you can hold Option and click the stopwatch, and from there you're gonna be able to enter an expression. So one of my
I'm doing this.
Awesome, yeah. Follow along. What the heck?
Why not?
But you can write expressions, and one of my favorite ones is just time, which is going to time references this number right up here in the corner of your composition. So right now the time is going to be 0. So you're basically timing times multiplying your time.
Yeah.
Time.
Yeah, that gets confusing because you're like time times.
Yeah, it really shouldn't say that. Multiply. You
That's
multiply
good. Multiplied.
your time. And you just pick another number. So I'm going to type 150 as my example. And so we're basically going to be taking 0 times 150, and that's still going to be 0. But if I go forward in time, and you're also going to see like the result of your expression you're writing right in that little circle, and you're going to see it results to 0, which is also our rotation degree. So if I go forward in time, our number starts to change because now we're timesing our 150 by this little 4.
You've blown my mind.
Oh no.
Are you guys taking notes?
Yeah.
Like, so again, excuse me, and I know people know this type of thing, but the fact that you just did this is awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And so we'll actually be taking this time expression, and there's another nice thing you can do. I'll show you what kind of little thing you can do here. So if you take times multiplied by 150 multiplied by index, the word index references your layer index, which is this little, sorry, let me actually zoom back in. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, so your layer index is this little number that sits next to your layer. So now you're adding like another layer of math on top, independent to each layer. So what that means is if I take this shape layer 1 and duplicate it, I am going to have a different index on shape layer 2. So as a result, if I grab both layers and press R, I'm going to be able to see both of my results. Although they're both being multiplied by the same time, they're going to also have a second multiplier for their layer index. So,
is it creating new layers essentially?
Well, we duplicated the layer ourselves. Basically, what this is doing is taking that math we did and also using another multiplier unique to that individual layer. So we're able to get this kind of staggered animation where although they're using the same kind of math, it's doing a little bit of a different thing. So at the same time, I could just continually duplicate this layer. And so all of these layers are
let's watch this.
Yeah, so all of these layers are going to look unique because they're all having like some crazy mathematics applied. So at the same time, you know, this expression is we can probably make it look a little bit better here. So if you double press EE on your keyboard, you're going to be able to see any layers you've written an expression to, and you can go and grab this time expression we wrote and actually maybe like divide this by the index, and we'll just go ahead and grab this layer here, and we're going to say copy expression only. So if you have a layer that has both an expression and keyframes, you want to use this little trick here. So then when we press R again to see all of our rotation properties, I can just grab all of the properties into Command V, and I'm only going to be pasting that expression we wrote and not any of the keyframes that were on that layer. So from there, what's going to be great is like now you're going to have that same expression we wrote all reacting differently across all the layers. But yeah, that's kind of like my little like super quick overview of why I think expressions can start to be really powerful, why coding can be really helpful, because it can automate so much of what you might need to do.
And again, back to like if you find yourself doing something over and over again and you feel like you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
Another question
Sure.
This is just for me though, by the way. Like if you wanted to tint each one of those a different color, like randomly, can you do random color cycling?
Sure. So this is actually an opportunity. We're probably not going to use black or white, just because, and not red. not that red.
And we might end up, if we're doing random, might end up red. But
yeah.
Hey, that's a surprise.
So this would be another example where we can actually like add something like an effect. So instead of like going and messing around with the actual color value, which is like an RGBA value, so that's going to be 4 values that will have to like work with expressions. You can actually just grab something like I think it's called like hue. Let me actually kind of maximize this and see. I know it's in the color corrections.
Hue and saturation?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to find which one it is, but I think we want like the hue and saturation. And if I turn this, cool. So that's actually what we want, is this master hue.
Ooh, and what's interesting about this is this looks just like rotation to me.
Exactly.
Sweet.
And that's why we went with an effect instead of the actual color on the layer, because that color is going to be a multi-dimensional property, a RGBA value, so it's going to be 4. And so anyway, like, I mean, we can just go and grab this effect here, this hue and saturation, press E once and not twice, and we're going to see any of the effects we've added to the layer. We can hold Command to toggle down, and we can grab our master hue we actually can't expression to, but I know there is a color effect that you can do the same thing to. I gotta find which one it is. Sorry for grabbing the wrong one.
No, you're good.
I was not prepared for this route.
I'm gonna paste in the to adjust the rotation.
Let's see. Okay, so I think we can go with this color balance is what we want. So not hue and saturation. We want color balance, which is hue, lightness, and saturation. So you paste that on the layer, or drag it onto the layer like we just did. Hold Command to twirl down all of your properties, and this hue property is going to look really similar to our rotation property. So what I'm going to do is actually hold Shift. So that's going to like save the properties we already have active in our little window. Double press EE. And we still have our property selected, but we've also pulled up any layer that has an expression added to it. So we can just copy that expression, and since this expression is like local to each layer because we use the index kind of call, we can just copy that and paste it into our hue
Did you
like
hold
this.
down Option click?
Option click if you want to pull up this little like edit window to add an expression. So we're gonna just actually copy this effect, grab all of our other layers and paste it. So each layer is going to have a different rotation on its actual rotation, and it's also going to have a different rotation on its hue value in its color balance effect. So if I preview this, you're going to see we now have this kind of like cycling color effect that is using some really, really simple effects. But this is like one of those really nice things is just using like individual layer indexes or just using expressions. You can do some really clever stuff, and I think it's a lot of fun to dive into. So
that's why I did the slow clap, man.
Yes.
Can we get a slow clap?
I'm looking for 10
Matt?
points, man. I want 10 more points.
10 points. Let's give him 10 points. I need a pen.
Yeah, keep track, man. I think I got to have 20 by now.
Yeah, we'll score this, and we're going to play some drinking games.
Yeah, Yuri's Yuri's in second place with 10 points. Might be tied with you for 10 points. Yeah, so that's kind of my my quick little overview of like how expressions can make your life wonderful, and your projects also have you know, it's also one of those things like when you look at it would be a lot more work to keyframe each of these things. And what's really nice also with these expressions is they can go on forever because it's all like kind of referencing our time value. So if I make this into like a 50-second composition or whatever number I typed, because I did not click 50, drag these layers out and I'll preview this literally can go on for like minutes, hours, days, years.
It could be, you know, like maybe it's some cycle color in the background or something. You don't even have to worry about it anymore as you play with the content of your timeline.
Yeah. And that's cool. I mean, if you ever needed to do like you get hired to create some kind of generative background that plays behind some cool office building, I mean, use some expressions and you never have to worry about keyframes.
I'm sorry, like just one more question. Maybe it's easy, maybe it isn't, but changing I know you did the rotation, but can you add a random expression as well? Like say if you wanted to change the position of something randomly.
Yeah, so if you wanted to change the position, well, we'll hop on over to our position property, hold Option, and just click into our little expression so we can write one, and we're gonna go over the really wonderful expression called wiggle, and all you have to do is type wiggle you add a parenthesis, and then you're gonna say how many times per second you want it to wiggle, and then you're gonna go and pick a value you want it to wiggle over. So I'm gonna go and press like 100, and then add an end parentheses and a semicolon to lock out that like line of code.
And zoom in on that.
Oh sure,
Get up in there.
I'm sorry, hey guys, I got a 13-inch little monitor right here.
Make it the size of our heads.
Sure. Is this better to see?
Go even larger, because
Okay.
they're probably dealing with the interface around
Oh
it.
sure. Sorry, I will minus 10 points from myself. We got
Minus
a
10
three-way tie
points.
for second
Okay.
place.
Matt.
Or a three-way tie for first place. There's no winners here. Right. But yeah, so we have just this little expression. It just says wiggle. The times per second you want it to wiggle, and then you have the value that you want it to wiggle. So since we have a multi-dimensional property, it's going to wiggle this 100 on both the x and y. But so why don't we copy this expression? You can go down to copy expression only, do Command A to select all of your layers, and press P on your keyboard for all the positions. We're just going to click and grab all of them and just do Command V, and we're going to paste just the expression to our layer. So let me actually zoom out here, and we're going to see the mess that we made. But these are all going to have like kind of now a little bit of a random movement, as well as that rotation based off their indexes, and also like a cool little color palette that kind of jiggles around.
So the first parameter, the 3,
Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle.
was that was the 3? What was the number 3? The first parameter.
So 3 is like I guess I would say describe it as like the time per second.
Okay.
But what's also nice.
And then the 100, is that the position?
Yeah. So if you had
So
like
time and then position.
yeah, and you
Okay,
could take
cool.
that same wiggle expression and sorry for tapping the mic, and you could throw that onto rotation, and it could be kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's kind of what the wiggle is. Another thing you can actually do if you want to take a deeper dive into expressions, zoom back in here, is there's this little context menu you can click up in the top by your contents under the add little button. Sorry, no, that was a total lie. I'm sorry, don't click this context button. You want to click option first, and then you're going to get this context little menu where you can go down in, and it'll actually like tell you a little, like it'll tell you
and
what
just
each of the
stay
values would
on
be.
this just for a second, if
Yeah.
you don't mind, just
Oh,
so
sorry.
and yeah, even twirl that out just so people can digest this and we can answer questions. Can you have a wiggle inside of a wiggle? I guess you could try it.
Sure.
Wiggle series.
I mean, you can just start stacking stuff. This would be if you want like a wiggle inside of a wiggle, wiggleception. You maybe would like comp it. There's other clever ways you can do it. Another really great resource is honestly just Google. If you wanted to make something else, you can like, I think there's some other kind of expressions. So this would be considered a hold wiggle right here. I just used a text macro to pop that up. But this is another one, and so this expression, it's obviously a little bit different than
Ooh, I
the one we
like
just
it though.
went over.
Yeah.
But what this is it just gives you a little bit more ability to tweak what you want to do, and you're gonna see that it obviously just got a little bit more complex at the end. But yeah, so we have like our frequency or times per second, the amount we want to wiggle, some multipliers here, and then since we want what's called a hold wiggle, we'll do some sneaky division based on our frequency amount. So why don't I actually zoom back out here so I can see what I'm doing. We will copy our expression only from our size. I have no idea how this is going to look either, guys. So
that's why this is
we can
live.
go up here. We can press size to pull all these up and like grab some size properties. Actually, this should probably work. I'll just kind of swing up all here, do Command V, and it got pasted right. So we're now going to have this cool little hold wiggle that's kind of doing something, I think, on the size, which maybe I needed like a bigger value. Actually, if we zoom in over
they
here,
are.
you can kind of see. I probably needed some some bouncier stuff. But yeah, so there's a ton of resources online. If you ever want to find out more about expressions, you can just like type in wiggle expression, learn more, and I'm sure you can find like 10 million websites that have some information on probably even more interesting stuff than like a hold wiggle or a regular wiggle.
Yeah. So and Dan, do you know Dan Ebert?
Yeah,
Has an
he's got a
expression
pretty
guide.
cool website. I think it's an old website, but a good website. But I definitely recommend checking that one out. I also really like going on over to W3 Schools, I think it's called, which is like just a free resource for JavaScript, which is like what ExtendScript I think is based off of. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, well, and that's why this is good, because I know you want to get into scripts, but this is the yes, it's a line of code, but the results of this are just stupendous.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and this is just like why we love computers, right? Like you can just kind of you tell the computer what to do, and sometimes that's even easier than
Circle Dance Party, man.
Circle Dance Party in color mode. Wow, powerful. Yeah, but this is just kind of like this wasn't like really a designed motion. This was just kind of something as we were talking, but at the same time you can see how it adds just kind of something that
some
maybe
visual interest.
Yeah, some visual interest.
But and the point is like animating this in keyframes would be a mess.
Oh, it would be a total mess. I don't even know. Like, I mean, you'd have to be a crazy person.
Like
if you designed this, you'd have to be a crazy man.
You'd have to be a crazy man with a lot of time on your hands.
Or woman.
Or woman. So yeah, you could do. I mean, and I thought you even did something with your macro. So obviously you have like set scripts that are your like go-tos that you use. So you're not rewriting everything.
Yeah, sometimes I use a little app called Atext. I think it's free to download, and every once in a while I'll have like a text macro for a simple line of code that's like maybe a little more annoying for me to like remember to write every time. So that's really nice to do as well.
Yes, it is. It is like a very complex game of Twister, because it's like the Twister dots.
Yeah,
right hand like yellow, and yellow's moving.
Twister mode. Right hand yellow as it spins, moves, and changes shapes.
So good at saying some familiar names. This is awesome. I'm curious if anyone here is new to the stream, and I should ask this like 15 minutes, well, half an hour ago. If you're new to the stream, we want to say welcome and good morning or afternoon, evening to you if you're new to the stream. Fun to see some new faces.
Oh, I see a question there. So can you also change the shape when you do this kind of animation? And the answer is 100%. Yes.
And you were changing the shape a little bit, yeah?
Well, yeah, but that was actually all through code. So, I mean, you can still add keyframes over your expressions, and that's also some of the power, is you can just add, like, some stuff, and then you can just, yeah, we'll do something with, like, a size on this layer. Maybe this layer is going to be, like, our super, this is, like, now making our Twister game easy. We're going to give a little scale up effect, but yeah, even though we have an expression sitting on top of it, we're still going to be able to do something with like the actual size, and the expression is still reflected on over to that. So yeah, now we have like our easy Twister mode. But again, this is not like an animation that I would say this is awesome, but I will say that this is interesting. Easy. Maybe
it is cool, man.
Yeah.
Good morning, Jeff. Jeff, you say yes, comma hello. I assume you're new. Welcome, my friend. Welcome. You're not old folk. You're like our friends that we get to see, which is awesome. Or at least in the chat. Someday we should have effectively what Adobe MAX is. It's like Adobe Live in person. So if you guys have a chance to go to Adobe MAX, it's coming up October like 17th. Like October like 20th. I know it ends on the 20th, so Max. Cool. 16, 18, I'm way off. 16th to 18th October.
Third day with us. That's awesome. Thank you for joining so long.
Or 18 to 20?
Cocoa? That's awesome.
That's what it says on the site. I think you're saying 16 because those are the pre-conferences, maybe.
Hey, South Africa.
Yeah. But either way, that's just join us in Vegas, because why not? Tell me that doesn't sound like a good time. Tell me that doesn't sound like I'm not going to remember that week. That is so cool, man.
Yeah, so that's kind of a funny one. I don't know if this is a good spot to
I love that.
Take a look at like kind of writing a smarter script that can apply extensions. It's actually way easy. I promise we'll make it look really easy. Or no, wait, I'll make it look really easy and it will be really easy. How about that? That's pretty cool.
Yes, and I think this was good because you introduced us to code essentially, and this is kind of the deeper dive. Perfect.
Yeah, so this is why code is worth it, is because you can do some really clever stuff with it. And we'll actually even write a little function to apply our little wiggle with an index or whatever it was, with time with an index expression to the layers we have. So
okay.
Save some time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if we want to, or if we can make that little beginner code template available, which is like a little starter thing just to get you guys a panel immediately into After Effects. that would be really, really sweet. And this is just...
What should I save this? I was going to just post this as a text file.
Yeah, I mean, however you would. And look at that second email I sent you. The first one is some kind of broken code. I put it together this morning, and last night, so I was kind of messy.
Okay, yeah, I think I got it.
Yeah, the second one.
Yeah, this one. There's another one below it.
Yeah, you want the one below it, I think, unless yours comes in like...
Yeah, it stacks them. So this one's 48. This is 55. So this one.
Okay, cool. Yeah, go with the 55.
Oh yeah, that would be a cruel joke for
so
misplace
sad.
a parentheses or.
But yeah, so once you guys have that zip, we can kind of dive into looking at some of the functions, and yeah. So one thing that I think you guys might want to do if you want to follow along with this coding is, since we're going to make a script, we need to save it into our script UI folder so we can actually open up in After Effects. So you need to restart After Effects. So if you don't have this file yet, just go ahead and quit After Effects and save your projects if you have a project open. That's something I learned about yesterday, I guess. And once you have this begin code file, and you can even just have a simple text edit. If you just have you don't have any coding software, you can just use this text editor. You're not going to get colors, but you can still do the same exact thing we're doing. So you can follow along pretty much no matter what you have, which is kind of fun. But maybe not fun. Text edit is not fun, let's be honest. But yeah, so I'll just kind of wait a second.
Yeah, I'm going to post it now. It's copying. Copy.
Kind of wait. But yeah, so once you get this piece of code, we're basically going to just kind of go through naming it, how you can set variables, and then probably the only thing that you ever need to do to write code, which is learning how to write a loop, which is really easy. So that'll be cool, and should be good. So if anyone who's interested in following along, I think you can download the script at one of the links that just popped up in the chat. Maybe if people are watching it after the fact on YouTube, maybe that'll be a link in the comment. I really don't know if that's possible.
Well, yeah, it doesn't really. The live chat doesn't go along with the video, but
okay, sure. Well, I can throw this on my site or something too if anyone's interested.
And honestly, I think the best thing to do if people do want this stuff, I just point them to Twitter. Hit us up on Twitter, and we can send the file to you directly if you're interested.
Cool. Yeah, so I guess at this point, I'm gonna guess that some people have this file, maybe. And yeah, so basically, what this initial setup is it's just a quick little 58 lines of code that's all kind of wrapped into a panel that is resizable, and it also has basically a spot where you just have to write a button, and then you just write a function, and you can just keep adding buttons forever. So it's really nice if you just want to have a little utility panel on the side. So what you're going to do is, once you have
make that even larger.
Sure, yeah. Sorry. I'll scale up in here.
There we go. So larger it can never be too large.
So once you have your little begin code kind of set up, what you want to do is save this actually to a specific folder, because we want to be able to open this up into After Effects. So what we're going to do is go on over to our applications. You're going to find the current version of After Effects that you want to work in. You're going to go on over to your scripts folder, and you're going to find this little other folder inside of the scripts folder called the script UI panels. So you're going to go and name this file as whatever you want to call it. This is going to be something that you're going to be able to launch from the menu bar. So I'm going to call this my super utility script, or maybe I'll just call it my super utility .jsx, and I'm going to save this into the folder. And so now I'm going to restart After Effects using Alfred just by clicking and opening After Effects just like that. Yes, let's do something awesome today. And open up After Effects. So once we've opened up After Effects, we want to find out where that little utility script is going to be located. So just like if anyone has checked out any other scripts before, they're launched from going into your window here. And so you can go up into your window, and hopefully we're going to see that utility script you just saved into your script UI panels folder available in your window dropdown. So I'm going to click that, and you're going to see it launches as this panel that resizes with one big button in it. And what I like to do is actually go up and say use legacy UI, so we get rid of that weird little outline there, and just dock this somewhere in your workspace. Another little quick tip, at least for when you're writing scripts, is to save, once you've docked this into a place that you are going to be working with, I really like to save this as a new workspace, and as we go along it's going to make some sense. So I'm just going to save this as the date because I always have a different workspace. But what's nice is if we're coding and we get a little crash, we're just able to like close this panel and reset our workspace to instantly like redock it instead of having to go back into your menu bar to launch it. So when we first launch the script, we want to check and make sure it's going to work. So I'm going to just create a new composition, I guess, and click the button, and hopefully we get a little alert that pops up that says alert works. Scripting, woohoo, Render Tom. He's an awesome tool developer and has some awesome tools that people should check out. I think Flow was his last one, and it's pretty sweet. So Render Tom, thanks for stopping by.
So let me, just to make sure I understand, I have all that. So I have this,
Sure.
I just called it Mt.Mograph script.txt.
So don't call it txt. What you want to do is save it as a .jsx.
.jsx.
Yeah. You want to make sure you do that, otherwise I don't know if After Effects is going to be able to find that.
Cool. And then does the name of the JSX file matter?
No, it can be whatever you want, and that's kind of fun when you're building a little utility script. Just maybe you could even name it something kind of silly.
Sweet.
Yeah. So I've got my little super utility script, and I've got it docked, and I've got an alert that works. So we're actually going to write our first little expression here, and this is going to be an expression that I like to call something like a prerequisite check, because when you're running an expression, you can get a crash if you don't have the right kind of active items. So you need like an active comp, maybe you need an active layer, and maybe you need an active property. So this is an expression that you might have to write a whole bunch. So I like to just make it into its own function, so we can just call that function and get it to work. But I promise it's not that difficult. So if we go on back into our super utility, or whatever you've called this JSX file, we're going to go on and look at these two little lines of comments where we have put functions under here and put functions above here is what I should have said. So this is where you're going to be putting your functions, and then we're going to have another little section where we can put buttons under here and above here. So we're going to have our first button available in this UI group, and right now I just called it button temp1. And what I'm going to do is I'll call this like I'm actually going to keep this just as a temp button, because this prerequisite check that we're going to be writing is going to be almost a function we're going to call into other functions. So this under my put functions, we're just going to press enter a couple times for a new line, and we're going to say function, which is just saying you want to create a new function, and we're going to name our function to be like check my stuff. And we're going to do a parentheses and add kind of like a second thing we want to declare, I guess, which is going to be like an extra check. And then we're going to add some brackets. And inside this, we're going to do like the meat of the project. So just set it up like this. And we're now going to go and we're going to say declare variable, so var. And we're going to do main comp equals app.project.activeItem. So what this is saying, and it really does start to feel really familiar as we go along, I promise. But yeah, so if you have your composition, we're going to just say we want our application, which is app. We want the current project we're in, and the active item is going to be the active item. And we're going to check and make sure that's a comp in just a second. So I'm going to go and I'm going to do a quick little if-else statement. So I'm going to say if we don't have a main comp, which is going to be an exclamation point, we want to, if we don't have a main comp, so if we don't have an active project item, or, so these two little lines by your backslash, we don't have a main comp that is an instance of a comp item. So I'm using some words that might not be familiar to people, and this can actually be found online when you go on over to Google and you type in something like After Effects Scripting Guide 6.5, I think was the last one, and let's see if we can actually find this real quick. Yeah, so here's this W3 Schools, which is a really great reference for learning JavaScript or coding. And if you find it online somewhere, you're going to see we also have this little scripting guide that Adobe has put out that you can kind of dig into. It's 253 pages, so there's a lot of stuff you can learn about After Effects in here. But that's why we're just going to cover the basics here. So anyway, that's where you can kind of find out what these names are and what does what. So I'm going to add more brackets here to this little statement we're writing. And at this point, we're going to actually add an alert. So just like we had that first alert that was like alert works, we're going to just do another one. We're going to say alert, add some parentheses, and in quotations, we're going to say we have a comp. And I'm going to say else. So alert. Parentheses, no comp active, stupid. And I'm gonna go in, and I guess you can add semicolons if you want to be a good coder. So I'm gonna go back into After Effects and do that thing where I just close this panel and just reset my workspace, not delete it. And it should pop back up our little super utility. If I click it and I don't have an active item, I have alert works, and if I go into my composition, Actually, I gotta call that function. So I've already messed up. I'm gonna close this panel one more time, go back into here, and so we actually wanna take our check my stuff and put this into our check stuff like this. And hopefully this will work. Let's check my stuff and check my stuff. So actually, sorry, this was silly, as I didn't really plan that one out. So why don't we just take this check my stuff and put this right here. So in theory this should work. Sorry, I put this I was just like kind of thinking about this today. So we have a comp because we don't have a comp. What the heck? No comp active, stupid. So I might have put my alerts back. Okay, so I switched my alerts, kind of funny, but this is just like the process of coding. Is there's a lot of times you can slap yourself in the head. Yeah, look at this. Render Tom, a fellow scripter and developer, said you have switched your if-else statements like an idiot, and I that is too true.
This is like one of those things, like, you know, it's like, hey, I got into animation. I didn't know I was going to do scripting, so it's
Come
like
on,
kind
man.
of a
I started
different
with
world.
ActionScript 3.0. Give me a break. Learning
Which
curves.
is tough.
Yeah, so we'll go back into here, and we're starting to see that our functions are working. So I'm gonna have my first one. Yeah, so I switched this. I guess our first one would be no comp active, stupid, is our first alert, because we do not have an active comp. So we want to add a return saying a return is basically telling you to exit the function and fail. So we want to fail here. So we're gonna say if we don't have an active comp, we don't want to continue running our function. So we're gonna say return this function as false, and it'll exit the rest of the process for us. So if we do have an active comp, so I'm going to say else if parentheses, let's see, we'll say main comp dot selected layers, which is pretty straightforward. It's the layers you have selected in your active comp dot length, so the amount of layers you have. If it's less than 1, so we'll actually just type less than 1. We want to do something else. So we're saying if we do have an active comp and we do have a layer count that is higher than 1, that is not higher than 1, we want to have another alert telling us that we don't have active layers. So under this one, what we're going to say is alert no layers, dummy, and add a little semicolon here at the end. And we're going to again want to return false if this is not a true statement. So, or like if this is not working out for us. So why don't we go ahead, and now that we have properly put our if-else statements, we'll see if we can get these alerts to work. So I'm going to go ahead and go back into After Effects and just reset my workspace and hopefully pop back up our super utility. I'm going to click off my composition and click my temp button. I'm going to say no comp active, stupid. That's a great reminder. I'm going to click my comp 1 and we're going to get no layers, dummy. Man, I think I wrote a very insulting script.
I know.
This is I'm going to rate the next one is going to give me 10 more points every time I click it. Ooh, that's how I'm going to win this game.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, so now we have an active layer selected in an active comp, so we'll click it and we're not going to get alert because that's all the function we wrote. So again, I'm going to close my little super utility script and we're going to go keep writing our function. So now that we have the basics kind of covered, what we want to do is now make one more check just to check for properties, and that's why we have this little extra do extra check in here, which is going to be a true or false thing we'll be able to push into this function. So now down here we're going to say if our do extra check is true, which is basically it's if we don't, just like we had this little exclamation point which is not, we're going to have if do extra check is called true, we're going to do something else here. So if do extra check, if the main comp dot selected properties, so again pretty straightforward compared to like your selected layers. So if the selected properties length is again less than 1, we want to return again no properties, or make an alert that tells us that we don't have the right things selected. And again, this is the most the most annoying little function we'll be writing today. The other two are no more coffee for Matt. I didn't even have coffee today, Paul. What the heck? But I guess maybe no more coffee.
This is your this is the thing, like I don't know what you'd be like on coffee.
Like, actually, man,
because you're full of life when you come in.
I try.
Like,
gotta seize the day, right?
Slowly.
So we're gonna have one more alert that's gonna give us an insult and tell us that we don't have the right properties. So we're gonna say no properties here, what you doing? And we're gonna just kind of add a little semicolon here. Semicolons just kind of like lock out the line you're doing, so try to add those where you can. And again, we're gonna just return false and exit what we're doing if we don't get that right statement. So again, we'll go on back to After Effects, and we are going to reset our workspace, pop back up our script, and we're going to go through that same process again and make sure all of our alerts are still working. So click it, no comp active stupid, click active comp, no layers dummy, click a layer, and we're going to hopefully,
you still have it selected?
No, I should have got, oh, sorry. So what we actually have to do here, since we have this little extra check here, we didn't actually allow it to happen. If we look at our function down at the bottom here, we're gonna have on our temporary button on click, we want to run check my stuff, but right now we don't have anything telling us to do that extra check. So this is where it comes really handy to call this function. I'm just gonna type true here and go back into After Effects, close our super utility, reset my workspace to reopen it, and now I'll have that layer selected and click my temporary button. I'm going to say no properties here, what are you doing? So at this point we have built out our little kind of prerequisite check that we'll be able to use for our other functions, and we can press OK. So this is really great. We've written some pretty cool little bit of code here. So at this point we have done a lot of failures, and you know, at this point we've checked for an active comp, we've checked for an active layer, and we've checked for active properties. So if all of those exist, we want to actually tell our code to do something else. So we want this function to do return true, and we can actually add a little comment here that says everything is good to go. To comment out items, at least in this program, which is Coda, again, 10 points to render Tom. I think he gets points at this point.
Yeah, he does.
Right?
He gets like 20.
20 points?
Just for who he is.
Render Tom, you showed up late, and somehow you've wound up in first place here.
20 points.
It's like, it's ridiculous.
I don't know how he does it either.
I know, amazing. Powerful. So anyway, there we go. We're able to get a function that's going to return true for what we're doing, and we're going to be able to take this function and use it in our other functions. But yeah, so this was the hardest function we'll be writing today, and everything else should be like super easy and hopefully pretty cool. So the next thing we're going to do is probably write an actual function, and in that actual function we're going to check our prerequisite stuff, or check my stuff that we just check. We're going to check our check my stuff function in another function. So the next one we're going to do, I guess, will be something with like the renaming adjustment layers, which I think I saw a comment about wanting to do. That's something I at least have in my own little utility thing. So we're going to call this this function that was just the original one in the little default template thing. We're going to call this our ADG or ADJ. ADJ or adjustment check. You can be as silly as you want with these function names. I know over time I've had some really silly things. And so we're going to have our adjustment check function. So
That's a good point, Kevin.
What?
Oh, nothing. He's just one code that makes everything for you.
Yeah.
You just tell you AE what you want to do. So this might be, a unique case where you're trying to, do some shortcuts within After Effects.
Yeah. So on that button click, now I'm actually going to run our adjustment check, which is going to be the new function that we've just declared. And I'm going to actually, now inside this function, call our other function. So I'm going to say if we don't get, what is this thing called? Our check my stuff, do extra check, we'll do false because we don't want properties. So since again we added that little like extra statement here, or do extra check to see if we have active properties, we're going to say false here in our statement, and we are going to add some brackets as well, and we're just going to add a basic return. So if our whole check at any point gives us a return false, it's going to actually return out of this function that we're calling it in. So it's going to bail out on the rest of the code. So that's and this is going to be like a reusable function that you can kind of use for any of the other functions that you want to call, without having to like rewrite all of these little guys up here. So there we go. We got our little return statement, and the next thing we're going to go do is do something called an undo group. So if
and is this how much? I'm just kind of doing a time check because it's 10. And we have about 50 minutes.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I don't want to lose anybody just because we're talking about a lot of
Sure.
code. So I don't know if we can kind of wrap this up.
Yeah, sure.
Somehow.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Just because this is pretty deep, and I don't want to like lose people who are looking for After Effects.
Okay, I do apologize for that. I'll just put my little like tiny utility script with those 3 things we talked about. I'll put it available.
Mm-hmm.
All of the language is very straightforward. The most advanced one we talked about here was this check my stuff thing, and the other ones you can probably read, and it feels just like.
And what's good about this is the fundamentals. This shouldn't change because typically you're changing a layer, so you need to have that.
Sure.
And then you get into the fun stuff down there. Do you have one of these already written that you can open?
Yeah, so this is actually my little live utility, and this is what we were gonna build, or the other functions that we were gonna write today. So we're gonna have our little test function that we're just about to jump into. So I'll just actually run through the lines super quick so we don't waste too much time here.
Yeah. Cool.
So and also somehow make this available online, or you can kind of
give it to me and I'll just post it ASAP.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we're gonna have a little undo group, and we're gonna begin our undo group. And if you begin an undo group, you obviously want to end it. So this is telling After Effects that you can do Command Z just to rewind back through that function, since it's kind of this custom thing you wrote. So next, again, we're gonna make sure we have our active comp, selected layers. This is just a simple little loop statement that is checking if our current layer is going to be an adjustment layer. If it is an adjustment layer, we want to read the first property in our effects. We're going to get the name of that, and then we're going to rename the current layer we're on with the name of our first effects property. Yeah, so that's that. And then the other one was just this simple little function that was going to add the one we talked about at the beginning of this chat, with the index expression, which I just wrapped in some parentheses. Again, when you look at it, it should make some sense. I think it was actually kind of good that we covered this one a little bit more advanced function right up here. And then all these other 2 just kind of are straightforward. So I will get this to you. Yeah. Yeah,
you can, if that one's good to go.
I would have to double check on that.
Okay. Oh yeah, no problem.
I threw this together real quick. So I was like,
well, and this might be a good chance to kind of do a shout out to Render Tom, and AE Scripts is like one place to find some of these scripts. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah,
and I'm always happy to answer questions about code. If you want to email me as well, that's always cool. Coding's really interesting as much as it's annoying. So anyway, that's coding in a nutshell, and how I think it could be really powerful for you and your workflow. So yeah, I guess now we'll kind of rewind it back to something more interesting for most people, which would be the animation side of things.
And this was good because we started out with those expressions in After Effects, and then got into scripts, and so it's just interesting, sort of the extensibility of After Effects, goes beyond what you see in your timeline.
Exactly.
It's even twirling down to expressions, and then next thing you know, you're writing panels entirely.
Yeah, and cool. I'll tell you also, like, just for anyone who's maybe a little intimidated about scripting or expressions, this wasn't something I picked up in a day. It definitely took some time to kind of get into it. So yeah, Render Tom has some really great tools, so I really recommend checking him out. And I bet you'll be surprised at what you can really make with scripts, whether you know like the scripts I've made or anyone else. You can really create anything. So it's like, you know, if you're just a person with this awesome idea, like take that initiative and try to make it yourself, and I bet you'll be really satisfied with what you can make. So that's really, really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, Tim's right. Like, yeah, so that's good. And you're typically like sort of still like standing on the shoulders of giants, whether it's Matt's or like Render Tom's or other scripts that are written, you know. So you could take a lot of those resources out there and extend them, because even the script that we get from you, like half that stuff you don't need to even mess with. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
You're checking certain things, and then you need to find a layer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I mean, there's also
you don't have to learn from scratch. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So this is one you were writing. If that was a question about the utility thing, so this is not like my main computer. On my main computer, I have like all these weird little scripts I've like half written. And I do have a script on my desktop that probably has or on my work space that probably has like maybe 25 or 26 just weird little functions that over time I found are really helpful for my own workflow, but maybe aren't like helpful for everybody. So I always try to like, just tailor it.
And that's how you ended up writing. I mean,
so
eventually we ended up.
Yeah, so I wrote like Motion, and I did like another one called Focus. This one I actually teamed up with my really good buddy Kuhn, who's this awesome developer, and this Midas one is pretty intense. So this is like the craziest one I've ever made, and this took us like a year and a half. But this is actually an extension, and is like some really, really intense coding. Which is like a whole, so it takes days to really dive into. So
no, but
scripting is the first step, and extensions is like, hey, I really want to melt my brain.
Well, and what's nice is like, I mean, just seeing you use this extension is awesome, because you're able to knock out animations pretty fast with it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
You know.
So that's pretty
that works
sweet.
For you guys.
So yeah, cool. So if I don't know if would you like me to talk about, or if anyone has questions or would like to see something in particular, I'd love to show you guys something. And thanks so much for joining too.
Yeah, thanks guys.
And sticking through that coding section. My God.
No, it was good. I don't know if. So how's everybody doing? The chat's just like stopped.
Yeah, like, oh, this coding
like,
stuff.
Yeah, I don't.
Cool. Well, I guess I'll kind of, if you don't mind, I can kind of go through. I'll actually work with one of those vector illustrations that we put out, and I'll just kind of start from scratch on that. And I guess if no one minds, I'll end up using Midas, because it'll make things really easy.
Well, yeah, and that's what I think people like to see you do, is like they like to see you work, and in some cases it's not glamorous, like, you know, dealing with an Illustrator file.
Sure.
And then, so
okay,
just seeing how you work.
Cool. So I'll go on over to my desktop. I have a little vector folder, and the file I'm actually going to work with is this arm illustration, and we're going to try to make this little kind of craziness. So I'll open this and import it. We want to import it with the layer size and composition. I'll click in here and double click into my composition, and you're gonna see I have a bunch of layers, and that could be pretty intimidating, but when I plan out my illustrations that I'm importing, what I like to do is just kind of plan it out ahead of time, knowing that a lot of stuff is gonna be in a comp together, or not comped at all. So for this first one, let me think about how we want to approach this animation. So I'm probably going to try to use like 6 keyframes for this whole animation, and we'll see if that's possible. So the first thing we're going to do is just draw a kind of dummy layer that we won't actually see at the end of this, center up our anchor point, and we're going to add a really easy little bit of code, or not code, some keyframes. Sorry, my head is still in other places, I guess. And I'll just kind of like drag this. Also turn off snapping. That's not a good time to have that on. Just kind of go forward in time here and drag this up into the corner. And if I preview this, you know, I do have a really stupid length of a timeline. 8 minutes. I knew this was looking funny. So we're gonna trim this down to 15 seconds. Command K to pop up your composition settings. If anyone's interested. And I also have really been enjoying working at 24 frames per second. It kind of gives it a nice little, I don't want to call it a cinematic look, but whatever it is at that frame rate, I really, really like. So I'll kind of go back in time or go forward in time. It almost doesn't matter where these initial keyframes are going to be. Go forward in time, kind of drag this guy up over here, and that's actually going to be like the base of this whole animation. So I'll let this kind of preview here. And we're going to push this basically to all of our other layers. I'm going to hide this layer for a second, and now what we're going to do is kind of use Midas, and I'll press P on my keyboard for the position property.
So this is how you work, Matt.
Yeah,
this is how he does his thing.
Yes. Actually, what I'll do, I'm actually going to just kind of focus these layers real quick, so I can see, because these are not all at the same indexes, so it's kind of hard to see what was going on. So I'll just grab P for my position property on any of these layers, grab these other guys, put it into a little Midas system and also into a comp. I'm going to name this comp to be maybe my top bar and press enter, and this is going to push all my layers into a composition as well as give me kind of a master layer on the position. So we're gonna let this one lie for a second. I'm gonna refocus back out of this composition. We're gonna grab our next section that we're going to try to take a look at and actually lock the composition, because that has turned into the whole layer size. Sorry if I'm just babbling.
No.
So I'll kind of focus this up, take a look at my hand layer. I'll pick one of the hand items, press P for position, grab the other layers, put this into a Midas comp again, and I'm going to call this my hand comp, I guess. Press enter, and it's going to do the same process we just did. Refocus back out of this, hide those guys for a second. I'll grab these guys, focus in, I'll press P for position, grab these dudes. It'll all make sense in a second. There's a little bit of a setup here. So I'll call this my sidebar, press enter. Again, it's nested into a composition. Refocus out of this. And
what is focus?
Focus is a little tool I wrote that basically will automatically shy and lock your layers and hide them for you. So it's basically like kind of a sneaky little way just to like make sure you're looking at what you want to be looking at when you want to be looking at it. But yeah, so that's what that one is. Grab these layers on over here, do one more focus just to make sure I'm only seeing what I need. And what's also nice is this focus will work with both the composition down here and also in your layers, so you really are only seeing, and if I unshy this, you're going to see we have all of our other layers in here. But this is, again, I'm just going to pick one of these layers to be kind of my master, grab all these other dudes, grab this guy here too, keyframe comp, and we're going to call this, oh no, close that. Maybe let me restart that. 1 second here. Key comp, and we are going to call this our bottom. Press enter, and we should be good. So I'll refocus back out of here. And now when I grab all the layers with Command A and then hit the little arrows next to it, you're going to see that initial mess of composition or layers is now kind of designed to be a very easy little system. So now we have that initial keyframes we set up on our diagonal moving layer, and if I go back in time to before it moves, I'm going to grab the position here, and I'm going to grab all the layers that are yellow, which are master properties to our to the nested compositions, and I'm going to do one more little Midas relationship here, and since it already has keyframes, I don't need a keyframe or comp, and I'm going to set this up. So now when I preview this, and again, this is on a laptop, so if you guys don't mind, I'm going to kind of knock this down to half resolution, and I'm going to preview this. Hopefully everything we have is going to move, and it's going to look really, really funky to start, because now we're going to actually use that magnetism thing we've talked about a couple other times to kind of push these values and do what we actually want it to do, or how we want it to end up. So I'm going to move this composition forward because we want, actually let me think about what we want to be making here. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go and click into my hand comp, and since we've gone forward in time, you can actually see how this the layers are all nested. What we want to do is like mess around with the magnetism, so I can press E on the keyboard to see it, toggle down to magnetisms, grab my XY intensity and my enable, do a grab, press SS to see all my selected properties, turn on enable, and now I can kind of tailor this animation a little bit more. So for example, maybe I don't want any of the Y intensities to be there, so I'll press 0 after doing a grab and kind of crank up these values. So they're pretty big, and you're going to notice how everything slides off the screen, kind of go through in time, and this is just like building up a relationship. Definitely grabbed one of the wrong properties here from our bottom bar, but we're going to pretend that was intentional. Or maybe I'll actually just give it a different kind of magnetism, so it's maybe only coming up from the bottom. So even though we have these diagonal keyframes, you're going to see that our little system is hopefully going to now at least have our hand only come out from the side here, even though it's referencing that diagonal kind of animation. So since this is a child as well, I'll tweak the magnetism here, turn that on, turn off my Y, and crank up this guy. Cool. So that's off the screen, and we're going to do the same thing with our other compositions. So click into the bottom, press E, grab your magnetism, enable XY, do a grab, press SS to see everything, turn on all your enables. And so for this one, we actually don't want any of the X intensities. And this is just like my personal weird little workflow, so maybe this isn't for everyone. But yeah, this is again like the power of scripting, I guess, is like for me, this was exactly what I wanted for how I like to work. So maybe if you guys just have like, man, this is not what I like to do, I like to do it a way different way, maybe you can write a script or a tool that is exactly what you want. So again, if you are interested in it, coding, I highly recommend learning it. So I'll make all these X intensities to be 0, and what I'm going to do with these Y intensities again is just kind of tailor this motion, hopefully. Let's go forward. Oh, actually I want to be going in the negatives, my bad. Kind of drag this, that was just from the artboard, so I'll grab this guy down, this guy. And again, this is all going to make so much sense in a second, hopefully. A little bit of a setup, but so what's great about this is this whole system is basically using some pretty intense expressions just to make our lives easier. So let me do this. I had a couple layers that were just empty artboards from that vector file. As you can see, it's got kind of a stupid little anchor point over there in the corner. Kind of turn this down, crank that one down, this guy. All right, and last one, and this composition had the most layers, I think, of all of ours, and I need to find where this guy is. Press SS or E to see our children, toggle here, make our Y intensity different. So again, all of this is referencing our one diagonal set of keyframes, but we've already pushed that out for only taking the X and only taking the Y. So I'll preview this and we'll see how we're doing here. But we're starting to get a lot of motion already, and we're going to continue to design it. I want to see.
Are you building in? Is it supposed to be animating in or animating out?
Well, right now I think I'm just working on getting everything out, and then I can just, since it's all based off 2 keyframes, I can like, you know,
do whatever
I want. Once I build up my initial relationship, I like to start really basic, and then kind of as we go work with my easing and then styling and
so it might not matter because you're basically like grouping everything together, and having it come from certain directions.
Yeah.
And building up the relationships, like we see the magnetism there.
That was kind of silly. So this one is actually, I did this kind of stupid. I wasn't really thinking. Sorry about that, but here, I'll try to do this real quick. Yeah, it's like so different to be talking and animating instead of just animating. It's like a different world, kind of. Cool. Awesome. So we're starting to get what we want here. Going over to my sidebar. And for these, just kind of keep going here. Turn off these Y intensities to 0. And if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer them, whether that's email or however. Always happy to help.
Let's see. Wesley, these programs are so complex with millions of dimensions. What's the one useful thing no one knows about but should? That's almost like a common, maybe like it's a common mistake or a common thing people overlook. I don't know if there's any, I don't think there's one useful thing people should know about, that don't know about, that they should know about.
That's a good question, though. I think everyone always knows something what is it? It's like everyone you meet in life knows something you don't know. So you can always learn something from someone. I think that's.
But it's also talking about like even when you get started, it sounds like it feels overwhelming. And I think if you need to know one thing, you just need to know keyframes and how to use those keyframes at the end of the day. Twirl down, access those properties, add keyframes.
Yeah, pretty much. So basically right here, I'd say it's good enough for this little example. And actually we can also cover proxies in this same example. So everything's kind of moving out from our one set of keyframes in this kind of weird way. This little guy is causing problems, so we'll change our delay into the... I'm just going to hide this layer. I kind of messed that one up pretty bad. But yeah, so we have this animation based off 2 keyframes. Add some easing here. It's going to be reflected to everything. But yeah, so I don't know. This was all kind of looks crazy. But yeah, I try to approach animation as incrementally as I can and as time-saving as I can. Because you don't want to spend all day on a computer. As much as computers are awesome, you gotta get outside and do some stuff, go on some hikes, which we both love. Colorado, right?
That's right.
So cool.
Sending my love.
That's basically what it is, right there. So yeah, I'll also again, I don't know how, but somehow you can also hit me up if you want to take a look at like this actual file that's like I spent a little bit more time on. And you can dig into here to see how like the layer styles work, or basically how this whole thing got made. A little bit more in depth and kind of I don't want to like go too far into a weird direction.
Yeah, so, no, you're good. So some people are asking about basically sort of like even starting from an Illustrator logo, like how to animate it, and they're saying would do you have to redraw it in After Effects?
No, I mean you could just import that hopefully pretty easily, and
Hajo, that's basically is like I want to animate a logo, how do I do that, sort of thing. You literally take that Illustrator file, import it, all the layers should come in, because that's exactly what happened with this file. It was originally an Illustrator file, and really a lot of that work kind of came down to sort of like grouping things together, because you want to group them into sort of like compositions or just something that you can animate at once.
Exactly. And I actually did see a question in there of like running at optimal speeds or something like that. I don't see it now, but I think that popped up a second ago. And probably one of the things that took me the longest to understand is up in your menu bar you have this little purge button, all memory and disk cache, and especially for someone working on like a laptop, just all that previewing can really fill up your computer. So if you clear that, you're gonna notice a pretty big speed boost every time. So that's a good one to know, is just to like be like maintaining your computer as you work if you have a crazy project.
Yeah, exactly. That's and it's funny that this optimization, like, people just don't know about. I feel like you need to go and definitely do that.
Yeah. Thanks for joining, Render Tom. You're the man.
Render Tom is the man.
Whatever. 20 more points to Render Tom. He's already in the lead. Whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah, you're the winner.
You can't ask for points, by the way. We give points.
He didn't even ask for points.
Oh, good.
His face looks like he just needs points.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that. Yeah. So, learning each tool inside After Effects versus learning different techniques to creating specific motions. I'm not sure I understand that.
Well, and I would actually do the second part. So do you want to learn? You don't want to learn each and everything. You want to do based on tasks. Like, what are you trying to do?
Yeah.
And then you learn how to do that one thing. It's not a matter of learning every little thing.
Yeah, I think it's also
because it's about like, why would you want to learn X.
Yeah, and that's also one of those things that I think one of the things with animation is you really want to like try to find your style or find what you like to create. So I think like as you kind of find your style, you'll also find the tools that work for you, and maybe that's all just native to After Effects. Maybe it's like some cool third-party tools from Video Copilot that's really great. Maybe that's like using some Cinema 4D in your After Effects workflow. I think it's just like to each of the designers, it's just finding out what you're most comfortable with. Like for example, even though I'm really comfortable in Cinema 4D, I'm not so happy with like their UV unwrapping tools or their or stuff like that. So I actually use another program called 3D Coat to do my like material painting and stuff like that.
3D Coat?
3D Coat, yeah. It's a cool little application that I don't think too many people know about. But yeah,
for
it's really,
After Effects?
No, it's not for After Effects.
Good.
It's for yeah. You're like, oh no.
I was like, it's a painting on materials.
Yeah. Well, it's yeah. Basically, can do, like make your polygons just like super optimal and do stuff with your. Yeah, it's just
Some of these little things, by the way, like and you show them, so you're at such an advanced level, and I think some people are here, and then some people are like, how do I bring in a logo? But even in terms of these little things, like with timing and animation, like holding down, I don't know if it was the Option or Shift key, when you have all these keyframes, how can you condense them down in a rubber band sort of fashion?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So that was like one of those things we did with that little, I think we talked about it yesterday maybe, where if you add a lot of keyframes to your layers, so like just hold Shift, R, S, and P to bring up some keys. I'm going to just add a whole bunch of random keys in here just so we have something to work with. So if you've like kind of roughed out an animation, whether that has easing or it doesn't, you can hold Option and click your little keyframes to like condense them down, scale them up. That's kind of nice. Also, if this project looks heavy to you, I think a lot of it is just the age of this laptop. This laptop was kind of gathering dust at my house, but since I was traveling, this was like all I could really bring. No trash can and iPad for me this trip.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
that's funny.
Yeah.
But that was good. So you just held on the Option key. So when it comes to timing, you know, it doesn't have to. It's not going to be perfect right out of the gate. You're going to play through it. You're going to realize things need to be faster or slower. And I think that's a good tip to adjust your timing without having to do a lot of work.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So how to animate the camera the easy way. This is a great tip from the ever awesome Andrew Kramer. Way back in the day, this is something I actually picked up from him, is when you create a camera layer, you just parent it to a 2D null, and it just gives you a way better way to control the position of your camera layer. So that's a nice little one from Andrew Kramer. You just kind of use that little pick whip and grab that null right there. And if this layer was 3D, which it's not, you could kind of use this null to actually move your camera around in the scene. But that is all Andrew.
How are those properties linked together? I'm sorry, I just missed that.
Right, so the camera is interesting. The camera is technically a 3D object, and the null is a 2D object, but for whatever reason, how the camera works, and again, this is not something I figured out. This is all Andrew Kramer here. You just can parent it to a null, and it's kind of a clever way to use your camera, especially in 3D space. It becomes
cool.
A lot easier. Or sure target, like Reverb Mike says.
Oh yeah, Reverb Mike.
Yeah. So
time stretch keyframe. Is that a menu option? And that's good if you do.
I think that's kind of like that option thing we were talking about. Then there's also like time remapping if you have a composition.
Can you point at that in the menu at the top by chance?
Sure, yeah. So if we have a composition, we'll just grab these and do Shift-Command-C to pre-compose, and we're going to call this our test comp. What you would basically do is right-click your test comp, go down to... Let's find this option, enable time remapping. And when you enable time remapping, it's going to set the initial keyframes for you. So you have your very first one at the beginning of your composition and the last one at the end of your composition. So when you're going through your composition and you find a time you like, you actually set another keyframe. And then from there, the keyframe is actually referencing like the point of the composition. It becomes a little weird to think about, but as you move this keyframe back, it's almost that same frame that's being moved back. So now when I play that, it's like That's time remapping. I honestly don't use it that much because it can get kind of weird.
That is kind of fun. And actually just go back into those settings for sort of like remapping time and all the different options there.
Sure,
just open that up.
Time. We have time reverse layer, time stretch is another one, but that one's again kind of maybe not an ideal way to stretch out your animations. I mean, also, who knows? It depends on what look you're going for. Obviously, so
time reverse layer would flip. It's like taking those two keyframes and flipping them.
Yeah, basically, you could reverse the keys. You could reverse the actual layer. If you wanted to create like an endless loop that you only did half the animation for, you could just reverse the comp and duplicate it, and then act like you did twice the work. So again, trick your.
That is good.
Yeah, but there's again, like I just really think that. I'm always surprised, or I've been surprised. I think now I kind of know most of After Effects, but there's always been something I found that's kind of funny. Here's another one that many people don't know is if you draw like a path here, and I'm going to switch this to a stroke real quick just so we can see it, and we go into our path item and grab these vertices. Oopsie. So press V and you can grab your vertices. Double click your vertices and you actually get a transform box for the selected vertices, which is really, really nice for a bunch of weird stuff.
Yeah, and since you didn't grab all of them, that's cool how you're...
Yeah, but that's like one that I actually accidentally figured out. I double clicked some vertices while I was crazy. And yeah, I was like, oh wow, what a nice little
You selected
thing.
them all, and then what did you hit again?
Let me do Command Z a couple times. So you just grab your path of the shape layer. You grab and actually let me switch my label color so we can actually see it a little bit better in contrast. So you just grab your vertices here, and then you double click on the vertices, and whatever ones you have selected will get a transform box that you can actually like move around, and also like rotate and scale. So that's actually really nice also when you're working with masking. But it's pretty sweet.
No, that is cool.
So
that is cool. Congratulations, Roland has been an Adobe certified trainer in After Effects since 2002.
Sweet. Well, thanks for stopping by.
We're going to give you 10 points because that's
10
pretty
points.
impressive, buddy.
You're coming in third.
Wow,
powerful. Yeah.
What do you do with these points? You get to buy things with them. That's not
They're
really
fake.
We just made them up. Yeah. I don't even know why we're keeping track.
Yeah. Is my website made by Squarespace? It's made on the Squarespace stuff, but I customized a lot of it with some CSS. But if you're looking to make or host a website, I do really like Squarespace. It's got some cool options. So.
Thank you so much, Gus in the house. Gus is an Adobe employee, so thank you, Gus.
Cool.
Yeah, that's why he's the wrench there. He fixes things. He makes things happen. We appreciate you, Gus.
Thanks,
Wondering
Gus.
when you're going to be in San Francisco next, Gus, because he's in Ohio or like somewhere in. Actually, he's like
Ohio.
Something I don't. So, it's like I don't know where he's. Not here. Gus, where are you from, buddy?
Yeah.
Why am I trying to guess? You're online.
I also see one other question in there. I guess I could answer is how much time do you invest to learn new things, and are you setting up some kind of schedule? Let's say 1 hour a day or 1 hour. So it's one of those things. I really like to do what I guess I would call like a deep dive into the projects. So whenever I get a cool animation to work on. I spend just a lot of time just kind of playing around in that project, and as I go through and just kind of experiment, I think that almost turns into my learn new things times. I think it's like a quote from Richard Branson is like, fake it till you make it. So you take the projects you don't know how to do, and then you kind of cram until you figure it out.
Yeah.
So that's always cool too. Can I share a really, really good URL for folks that want to start learning expressions? I'm sure.
What's that? Could share a URL for?
No, that's
learning?
what Roland was saying in there. Yeah, I bet that's cool.
Yeah, and I think expressions are really, really powerful. They're your gateway drug into like scripting, if you ask me.
And then scripting will slowly lead you into the terrible world of extensions.
Yeah. Then next thing you know, you're writing them, you're, getting a huge benefit from them, and then you start selling them to others too, or whatever, giving them and so, like benefit. It's the same thing with, say, Kyle Webster's brushes.
Yeah, which are really, really great. If no one's seen the Kyle Webster brush set, it's really nice for Photoshop, and I think there might be heard some kind of rumors about possibly some brushes from Illustrator from him. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah.
But that'd be pretty great.
That would be good for him, by the way, just to leverage his brand into Illustrator.
Yeah, that'd probably be a cool move. So when you started coding ActionScript, did you use the Adobe guide? I did. I bought all the books. I studied. Francis Correa, here's your shout out. Thanks for joining the stream. That's really, really awesome.
We're not really showing anything right now.
Do you much work in Cinema 4D Lite? I actually typically I pay for like the full version of Cinema 4D, so I don't really use the light version just because I paid for the full version. But yeah, so you can use and I use a lot of like exporting with like transparent backgrounds and stuff like that, and that's kind of my workflow. You can also use something like Cineware if your project's not too heavy. But yeah, an awesome job, Yuri, for learning expressions today. That's really cool to hear. Midwesterners need a MoGraph meetup sometime. That'd be cool if you can organize that. That'd be really cool to see. Kevin says it's hard to learn Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, After Effects, Cinema 4D, and coding. I do everything. Yeah, no, there's a lot to learn. But it's really nice. Like at least most of it is kind of feels familiar. Like Illustrator kind of leads you into After Effects, and Photoshop kind of feels like InDesign. So as you're learning, it kind of starts to all feel really familiar. So that's cool.
Kevin Schneider, it's hard to learn Illustrator, Photoshop, and did you already read that?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's cool.
I was typing
it's
up.
Cool, man.
It was basically.
You are lagging on sleep.
Yeah.
So it's fair.
Something's going on.
My good friend Nikhil is stopping by. Thanks, man. Every time I see that name, it makes me happy. It's so cool.
Basically, I was taking a look when our next live stream is. So basically, September 12th through 14th, we should be having an Adobe XD live stream. So we're talking about UI, UX, creating interfaces, animating them, sure, but really kind of creating those interfaces and those experiences. So that's September 12th through 14th.
Sweet. That'll be a cool one to swing into. So recommend any Slack groups. Actually there's so much like media and ways to connect that I actually don't use Slack. I had it for a little bit. But yeah, I mean, just between everything else, it just started to be too much. I actually don't know too much about Slack, but I know pretty popular for a lot of people, and there's some cool groups you can join. So sorry I don't have a better answer for that, Evan.
No.
Do all of your vector work in
is.
AE and spend less time in... Oh, yeah. Wow. Slack is... I mean, it's a cool app. It's not like I don't like it. I just already have so many other things I got to have my brain on.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, in Reverb Mic, all the vector work in AE over Illustrator. Illustrator just has some tools that make just creating certain kinds of files a little bit easier, but you can also still create a lot of stuff in After Effects, just totally native as well.
Yeah, and I think the key thing, even Kevin's kind of mentioning, kind of the more you know, the more opportunities you might have. But then you also need to get into eventually, potentially like specializing. You can be a generalist and know a lot about, you could be okay at a lot of things, or you could really know After Effects and be freaking a rock star like you,
and
So
well, even inside of that, I mean, there's like, I kind of like to look at it as like a kaleidoscope. Like even if you only knew After Effects, like when you work at a company, I used to work at this agency, and there's like one person that only did color grading on footage. There's one person that only did like importing and worked on encoding. It's just like, yeah, you can, and that's actually one of the really wonderful things. It's really hard to get bored with animation, because anytime you get kind of tired, you can just kind of like, oh, I guess I'll learn color grading today. I'm sick of doing animation. So that's really, really nice.
I think we all know the people who do say that they know everything, and I'm like, I get it, you.
There's no way.
But I like, I get it, you. Like, I know very few people that know everything. You know what I'm saying? There's very few people, and then know it well, and then can also design, have a design sense as well. So.
Yeah, I think I would put Roland as probably the one in this chat that probably
Roland
knows
does
the most.
Roland's the man. He's like After
verified,
Effects 2002.
Yeah.
He's
got
got points.
Yeah, he gets some points
He's
too.
got some points.
So cool.
We'll still read those comments because we're coming down to sort of our last 5-ish minutes. Next up, D.W. Watterson, movie director Simone Smith. Sorry, Simone Smith.
Yeah, whoop whoop. Yeah, Simone in the house.
She's awesome.
Yeah,
super chill. Got the Canadians coming up. I see Toronto After Effects House in the chat. They're from Toronto, so
it's actually so crazy. I feel like Canada is kind of turning into a hotbed for animation. I mean, Andrew Embry. From Ontario? I might be wrong about that.
Evan Abrams is Canadian.
Oh yeah, look at that, coming in strong with all these animators.
Man, no, I must say that all the places we go, I end up in Toronto a lot.
Do you?
Yeah.
You're like, every time you're like, how do
I end up here?
So you might need to do
like
better
more
at
than
planning
like
trips.
Chicago and places. But it's really interesting because there's just like, there's more going on there than people think. But they just have a super chill attitude about it. Like, we're just Toronto. Yeah. We're not like, no,
we're just
you guys are
people.
awesome.
But yeah, thanks so much for stopping by, guys. Really appreciate all the awesome comments and questions. It's been a really cool blast. So I think we have a little bit more time left.
Yeah, man, we're just hanging out with you guys. We're hanging out with you. How did you enjoy 3 days of live streaming?
3 days of live streams. I think if I ever get to do this again, I would pace myself a little bit better. I had it's
a recording.
I kind of.
You can always go back. You can always rewatch this.
No, I mean, I think I would have tried to spread out content over a couple days. a little
bit
better.
You're good. Like, yours are the type that I'm like, I did not catch all that. Good thing I can rewind this puppy.
Yeah, so maybe a little bit more planning. But
perfect. Really like, cool. I would rather have you cram all this information in there than not. And obviously, replays. If you're on AdobeLive.com, you have the replay button.
Yeah.
Check those out. Not now. Next week, guys.
It's time to watch the replays at half speed.
I wish there was a way to. What if that was a way to slow it down?
Hi, Puerto Rico. Kevin, this was my last day. I will not be back tomorrow, but I will be trying to get back onto my YouTube channel. Maybe even with some live streams. I was so nervous about doing a live stream. So thank you, Paul, for even having me and helping me out with this.
Easy. Easy peasy. I'm just hanging out drinking my coffee. My juices.
My beer.
Yeah, and I feel like I was drinking coffee and you were getting more hyper.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't
know how that's
the Wonder Twins or something.
Yeah.
What are some tips you would give to people starting motion design? Honestly, as silly as it sounds, just start with creating your own artwork, and just like kind of coming up with like a design sense that you really enjoy. And also, as you learn to create your own artwork, you'll always have better stuff to learn how to animate, or like to animate. You'll have like assets to play with instead of just like a circle or a square rotating on a screen. So that's probably my numero uno tip for people starting motion
And we only
design.
got into a glimpse of this because even if you think about sort of animated GIFs, just a huge resurgence in those. Like,
I know, it's so funny.
And we didn't even, you can knock out an animated GIF in here if we wanted to.
Yeah.
And another thing, we didn't even really deal with a lot of, any footage. I don't think anybody's dealt with footage in After Effects. So that's, another interesting area that
you can get into
may or may not.
Motion tracking. You could use the face tracker, which is a really cool little piece of After Effects that not many people know about, but has some really cool uses. You can track all kinds of stuff to people's faces, give them googly eyes, as Jason on over there knows all about.
Googly eyes.
But yeah, and so.
I'm cool. Thanks, guys. We're just relaxing, just chilling.
Yeah.
This is how it is on the third day.
I know, the third day.
We'll get chill. We'll get really loopy after a while. But it's always enjoyable. Fun having you, man. Good times, man.
Thank you.
Fellow Denverite.
I know,
So
it's cool. We
we'll
connected.
easily be crossing paths.
I like that we connected in San Francisco.
I know.
Again, we live in the same place. It's hilarious.
We tried to get you out here like a year ago, but your dog was sick apparently.
Yeah,
So
I tried, man. But you guys had another really cool guy, Vinson, came out here and did a presentation, and he was a great replacement, I thought.
Oh yeah, that was like last year. Does wait? What does that say? In Adobe, is there no GIF export?
On the Mac version, there isn't a GIF export, or there is maybe. Yeah.
Either way, we're out of time to answer that question. We can't. We had a minute out. Sorry, guys. Mt.Mograph on the Twitters and Instagrams.
Yeah,
and
maybe just Instagram. My Twitter is
okay.
It's kind of. I don't like that much. But yeah. But anyway.
Oh, Roland from Creative Cow, buddy, man.
Oh, that's cool.
Blast from the past. Good times. Thanks, guys. Stick around. Ooh, look who just walked in. Good to see you guys.
Simone
DW Watterson.
DW.
Simone in the house. Good to see you guys.
Awesome.
Everybody, let's clap Matt out. Kind of not too loud because there's a mic right here. Matt's the man.
AKA
we appreciate
one
you.
One person clapping. I love it.
No, everybody send him some love. And follow him, stalk him on social media. Thank you so much,
cool.
Matt.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining, guys. It was awesome for all the cool questions. And thanks, Paul, and thanks, Adobe, for having me. It was a blast. So, cool.
Thanks, guys.